Okay, ladies and gentlemen, 1.4, multiplying integers. So multiplying integers really isn't that difficult. Again, we are going to end up talking a little bit about the commutative property, which means you can swap those two numbers and it's still going to be the same result. And we just have to be careful about our positives and our negatives. But in order to dive into it, we're going to introduce it by talking about the factors of different numbers. So a factor is any number that you can divide. So a factor of 3 is any number that you can divide 3 by and get a whole number. So if I take the number 3, I can do 3 divided by 1, that's 3. I can do 3 divided by 3, that's 1. Could I do 3 divided by 2 and get a whole number? No, I'd get a fraction, right? I'd get a rational number, which is a number, but it means that 2 is not a factor of 3. So the only factors of 3 are 1 and 3. Take a second to think about the factors of 8. 8 is divisible by
1, 2, 4.
Divisible by 1 because we'll end up with 8. And we always, when we're writing the factors, you can think about them however you want, but when you write them down, write them in order. Okay? I think of it as going up a hill and then going down a hill. And I'll make sense of that in a second. You have 1 on this side of the hill and 8 on this side of the hill. What's another factor of 8? 2 is working up the hill, and then I'm at 4. The only number in between 2 and 4 is 3. Is 3 a factor of 8? No. So that means I've gotten to the top of the hill, and on the other side I already have all my answers because there's always a match on both sides of the hill. Okay? So all the factors of 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8. Go ahead and do the factors of 15 on your own. When you're done, you can check the board to see how you did. You don't need to draw the hill. I just use it to teach because I think it's a good way to make sense of, okay, now so 2 is not a factor, so now I move to 3. 3 is a factor. It matches with 5. The only number left is 4, and that's not a factor. So I have up the hill and down the hill all my factors. 1, 3, 5,
And then where does 15 go on the
15.
Okay.
Okay? So factors is any number that divides the number that you started with. Another way to think about it is that there are always 2 factors that will multiply to the product. There are always 2 factors that will multiply to get the original number. We are going to take a little break here and watch the Math Antics video, and then we'll just watch. We'll take some notes afterwards. Okay, we have watched the first half of that video. The Math Antics video on multiplication and division using integers, integer multiplication and division. It's saved on Pigeon, so you can go ahead and watch it again at any point. And we're just going to look under that link on your notes. And what did we learn in the video? So 1 and negative 1 are factors of every number. Yes, you can pull out a 1 from any number and be left with the number itself. You can also pull out a negative 1 from any number and be left with the opposite of the number, so the negative of the number that you started with. Well, what if you started with the number 3 and factored out negative 1? What factor would be left over? In other words, what would we need to multiply by negative 1 to get positive 3? That's right, you would have to multiply by negative 3 in order to get positive 3. Why is that? It's because 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 negative factors will result in a positive product. Let's try a few. Number 1, we start very simple. 5 times 6? 30, and it's positive because we have 2 positive factors, no negative factors. Negative 3 times negative 8.
They balance each other out?
Let's not say they balance each other out. That's a little bit confusing language. Let's say 2 negative factors results in a positive number. So we have a factor of negative 1 in this number and a factor of negative 1 in this number, and negative 1 acts as a switch. If we just had the negative 3, it would be negative, but we have a 2 negative, so we're going to go negative back to positive, resulting in 24. The third one there, negative 7 times positive 7. What do you think? Negative 49. 7 times 7 is 49. 1 negative factor gives us a negative result. And the last one, negative 9 times negative 2. equals
Positive 18.
positive 18. And one little note here, I wrote this one differently on purpose so that you could see that brackets is multiplication. There's a few different ways to write multiplication. We could have done it like this,
Put it off there.
or we could have done it like this. Okay? Those all say the same thing. They're all multiplication. They all equal positive 18. Okay. We have a couple minutes left. We're going to continue on. What does it mean to square a number? What does it mean to square a number?
Using it times by itself.
To square a number is to multiply a number by itself. So you don't need the word is there in yours. What does it mean to square a number? To multiply a number by itself. And I always like to give a little example there. Basically, we use an undefined variable, so we could say sure, let's do x. No, x is hard because it looks the same as multiplication. Let's say a squared, and it equals a times a.
Yep.
That's it. So let's try a few. Number 1, 6 squared. What does it equal? 6 times 6, which equals 36.
So bam.
2 is a little bit more challenging. We have a negative 3 squared.
It's
gonna be-
negative 9. Positive 9.
Excellent. Which brings in a question.
Positive.
The squared number will always be positive. Okay, it will always be positive because if you do have two positive numbers, obviously the product is positive. If you have a negative number squared, you're multiplying two factors of negative 1, which makes the result positive. Now, I'm going to explain one little tricky situation that you do run into quite often. Here we had negative 3 squared, but watch this. This also says negative 3 squared. But here, the rules of BEDMAS apply, just like they did here. The negative sign sticks with the 3 before we multiply it. But here, what we really have is negative 3 times 3. See that? So we have 9, but the negative sign is separate from that. We have to do the exponent first and then the negative sign. That's negative 9. So this is not the same as that. Your practice problems for multiplying integers are found on page 68, numbers 1 through 74. Enjoy.